Right then, hello there. Yeah, got a confession to make straight away about this one. This opportunity to do this video has come on me a bit unexpected. Yeah, I don't know if I'm getting a lot of time to do this stuff, so winging it a bit here. It's at the ungodly hour of 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Not even, done me barnet or had a shave, but I've made a few notes and let's see how we get on. Hey, if I may stutter, stumble or fall, what's new? Right, okay, so bear with me. Right, first of all then, so the truth behind the King Arthur legend. Yeah, well, I believe there is a truth there if you look hard enough. If you cut through all the sort of medieval jive and all the Hollywood stuff, there is a kernel of truth there, and Arthur did exist. Now at the conclusion of this, I'll be putting my own theory about Arthur forward, which is unique, original, and it is what I thought of. Yeah, but all the rest of it I've gained from other sources, so I don't want to be accused of plagiarism or taking credit where none is due. So I'm just going to reveal my sources now. This is going to be the boring bit, or should I say the bit that's more boring than the other boring bits. But anyway, here we go. Right, this one, King Arthur: The True Story, Phillips and Keatman. Yeah, absolutely brilliant book. This, even if you're not into Arthur, this is like a layman's guide to the Dark Ages. Fascinating stuff. I'm going to be revealing a bit about what they come out with in this, but obviously I don't want people just not to buy the book, so there's plenty in here that I will not reveal, like the location of Avalon. Somebody's cutting the lawn outside. How inopportune. Avalon, where he lived, Camelot. Yes, I'm losing my thread here, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, these guys place Arthur, Central Wales. Okay, right, next one, BBC historian Michael Wood. Bit sceptical about Arthur, but if he did exist at all, Wood thinks Scottish lowlands. Arthur and the Lost Kingdoms, Alistair Moffat, another excellent book. This is about Scotland before the Scots arrived, but his final paragraph is all about Arthur, and he's very, very good. And not naturally, he also places Arthur in Scottish lowlands. Right, I hope you can't hear that bloody lawnmower. Right then, okay, The Age of Arthur, John Morris, the Bible of Dark Age historical writing. If it ain't in here, it ain't worth squat. Okay, it doesn't really address the Arthur thing, but there is so much info in here that that is an excellent read if you're interested in the Dark Ages. Claire Rayner, yes. How did that get there? Brutal. Right, okay, one other book. Now I've got a bad back and this book's in the loft, so I couldn't bring it down. Gildas, The Ruin of Britain. Gildas was a Welsh monk living in the 6th century, possibly a contemporary of Arthur's, and he wrote an open letter to all the British kingdoms at that time, telling them to stop leading ungodly lives and squabbling amongst themselves and to deal with the heathen Saxons. It's the only real contemporary literature of the time, and it is does reveal a lot about the time. Now then, so let's get on with it. Right, okay, now I'm nothing if not high tech, yeah, and I've got a prop today, yes. All expenses been spared. This is out of my road atlas, right? Yeah. Gross Britannia, there we are. Okay, Britain. Okay, now let's go back to the time of Christ. Yeah, before the Romans came, Britain was essentially one country. It was called Prydain, from which we get Britain. And it was a series of Welsh-speaking Celtic kingdoms or groupings. Okay. Now, see, I know I lose my thread. Oh, he's moved. The fellow cutting the lawn, he's moved around the back now. That's good. Right. Okay. So that was Britain pre-Romans. Okay. Now the Romans came along. I think it was AD 43, 47, something like that, and took over. Now, after a few initial squabbles, the Britons, oh yeah, these Welsh-speaking Celts henceforth I'm going to call them, refer to them as the Britons, yeah, ancient Britons, yeah. Now, after a few initial disagreements, they settled down to being part of, you know, the Roman Empire. There was even a name for them, Romano-British is what they became. So, 400 years later, 410, when the Romans departed, the Britons weren't on the cliffs of Dover dancing a jig. Oh no, they were, well, they weren't best pleased. They made innumerable requests for the Romans to return, but it was not going to be. The Romans had gone, and they had gone for good. So, what started happening once the Romans left? Well, I'll tell you what happened. Now, from the east, this side anyway, we had Angles, Saxons, Frisians, Jutes attacking the eastern seaboard. Henceforth, I refer to these people collectively as Saxons. Okay, from this side, the west, I hope, we had Scots and Irish attacking. And in the far north, the northern tribes, far northern tribes, were referred to by the Romans as Picts, Picti, because of their painted faces. The Picts in the far north here were also attacking the southern brothers, if you like. So, what happened? It was basically a bad time for the British. Gildas, writing about this time, says there was starvation, slaughter. I mean, it was just, you know, a thoroughly bad do. Now, the guy in charge of the Britons at this time was Vortigern. Now, Vortigern came up with a cunning plan. Yeah, what he'd do, he would enlist the Saxons as mercenaries. He'd give them lands in the southeast, in exchange for them aiding his fight against the Picts. I believe the Picts were building a fleet to sail down the North Sea and attack London. So Vortigern took on Saxon mercenaries. Now, this did not end well. In fact, it didn't last very long at all. The Saxons rebelled, killed off a lot of the British gentry in the original Night of the Long Knives, and began their expansion west and north, which several hundred years later would result in the formation of England. Okay, now obviously Vortigern was dead in the water after this. I mean, for one thing, this scheme had failed completely, and also by this time the Britons were Christians, the Saxons were heathens, so the British were, you know, even before the revolts, were not keen on having, you know, heathens as their allies. So that was the end of Vortigern. Okay, now next on the scene was a guy called Ambrosius Aurelius. He took over from Vortigern. Now, he was held in great esteem. Gildas loved this guy, you know, speaks of him in very high terms. Ambrosius wore the purple, meant he was of royal Roman blood. He came from Dinas Emrys in North Wales. I don't know if he had any British blood, but now his campaign pushed the Saxons back into the southeast, and he was very successful. Now, it's at this point that the Dark Ages truly get dark. The reason they're called the Dark Ages is not so much because of the terrible things happening, is because the Celts, Britons, sorry, had they retained their knowledge and passed it on verbally. They didn't write stuff down, so nobody knows really what was going on, because the Romans had gone, who wrote stuff down, and the Saxons, who subsequently wrote stuff down, hadn't really, you know, established themselves. Hence the Dark Ages. So we have very little to go off about what happened next, but there are a few clues, and this is the era of Arthur now, where it goes dark. Now, this is where my notes run out, so winging it a bit now, but so right, okay, well, the first mention of Arthur, and to me the most solid proof of existence, you like, is a poem called the Gododin. which was written from the Welsh in it. It's been established it was written in the 6th century. There's that lot more again. Essentially what it is, it was written here. This was the territory of the Gododdin, Edinburgh. And they wrote a poem about a great warrior from Edinburgh. His name escapes me at the moment, I'm very sorry. But he was heading south on a battle campaign, which he got defeated. But he was held in great esteem, this warrior. And in the poem, he said, what a great warrior he was. But there's a single line which just says, but he was no Arthur. And that is the only mention of Arthur in this poem. But it's almost like a sort of aside, by the way, sort of thing. It's not, the great exploits of Arthur. So the way it's sort of mentioned in this sort of, matter-of-fact way, he was no Arthur, indicates to me that, this was a real known guy at the time. And, why would they make a name up, it's like, he was no Arthur. It's like saying, Harry Kane is a great striker, but he's no Pele, It's obviously Arthur was held in very high esteem. He can just be just his name, one mention of his name here, and who he is. He's a great warrior. So that to me is probably the most compelling evidence for his existence. After that, well, we have other fairly reliable sources. For example, there's Nennius, an historian. I'm not sure when he was about, but it wasn't long after Arthur. He chronicled stuff about Arthur, and he did the 12 battles of Arthur, listed all of Arthur's battles. Now I'm just going to quickly go through this because my theory at the end of all this is linked to the locations of these battles. Now if I consult my high-tech map again, I'm just going to quickly run through the most likely locations of these battles. The first one, the river called Glane, probably Lincolnshire. The next 5 were in the region of Linneus, again probably Lincolnshire, which is this area here. Okay, Bassus, possibly Glasgow. Now the only one we know for definite where it was the 7th battle, Card Coed Caludion. That is Welsh for the Battle of the Caledonian Forest. So clearly that was somewhere in Scotland. Guinean Fort, people think that was in Hampshire, right down here. City of the Legion, well, it could be Caerleon, South Wales. I think that's unlikely. I can't see why he'd be fighting down there. Chester, which was a city of the Legion, possibly. Carlisle, another prominent city of the Legion, again in the north. Could be either of those. Then we have the river called Tribute, possibly Stirling. The hill called Agned, Edinburgh. And then the final one, the biggie, was Baden, which most people agree was probably in the southwest of England somewhere, probably near Bath. Little Salisbury Hill is a strong possibility for that. Didn't Peter Gabriel sing a song about that? I got that wrong. Anyway, so those are the 12 battles. Now, obviously, there's quite a wide spread, isn't there? We've got Stirling up here. I mean, the Caledonian Forest could be, in the Blinking Islands, I mean, Stirling, Edinburgh, Glasgow, a load of battles there. Then we're going down to Hampshire, Bath, Lincolnshire. I mean, they're all over the place. So this is where my theory about this starts to crystallise. Now, for a start, for one general, no matter how good he is, to win 12 battles, in terms of logistics, manpower, and sheer luck, to do that, I think is beyond one man, to be honest. I think there's probably other battles, being brought into the mix from maybe, future dates, I don't know, but my theory sort of crystallises around this spread of battles. Now I can find the books. The books. Let's return to the theories, okay? Now these two guys place Arthur in lowland Scotland. Okay, now there's a very good case for that, because there is a cluster of battles in this area, and place names as well. I mean, probably the most famous is Arthur's Seat in Edinburgh, but there's a lot of place names associated with Arthur in this area. Okay, now the other theory propagated by these gentlemen places Arthur in Powys, East Wales, here. Okay, now they use Gildas to prove this, if you like. Now Gildas doesn't actually mention Arthur by name. People frequently say, well, if Gildas, who was writing at the time, doesn't mention him, he couldn't have existed. Well, the interesting thing about Gildas is that his first language was Welsh, but he wrote in Latin, pidgin Latin, you might say. Now he does make a couple of references. He refers to the existing kings, you know, these kings he's naffed off with. Cuniglasus of Powys, he refers to as the inheritor of the bear's kingdom. He also refers to him as the whelp of the bear, and he refers to this great, you know, this bear as this great king who has been murdered by his nephew Mordred. Sogli, Magloconus, getting a bit carried away there, Magloconus in Gwynedd, which is next to Powys. Now I think these guys have a really good case, because if Gildas had been writing in Welsh, his native Welsh as opposed to Latin, he would have been referring to this mighty bear, or this warrior called Bear, as Arth, because the Welsh for bear is Arth. So Gildas would have been referring to this mighty king Arthur has been murdered by his nephew. I mean, if you think of the, you know, the medieval jive here, I mean, that was Mordred, wasn't it? I can't remember. In the sort of fanciful tales about Arthur, he's murdered by his nephew, and here, going back to contemporary records, this great king Arthur was murdered by his nephew. So I think they're on to something here. And like I say, the guy was called, I mean, Arthur, Welsh for man is Gŵr, Arthur, bear man, you know, the mighty warrior bear, whatever. I think these guys have got it right. And this, I'm not going to say, because they actually reveal the guy's name. You know, Arthur was like a title, you know, like a nickname, you know. They actually name him. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to stop people reading the book. But the guy they name, his father in the Welsh genealogies was called Inian Wrth. Okay. Now you think of in tradition, Arthur's father is called Uther Pendragon. You know, Wrth. You know, again, there's connections here. So I think these guys have located a King Arthur in Powys in the Dark Ages. Gildas also says this King Arthur had special weaponry. Now I'm not quite sure what he means by that. I mean, at the time he had bows and arrows, and you know, they might have had maybe some Roman stuff flinging. You know, I don't know the terms, but it's interesting. You know, there's obviously this guy who Gildas liked a lot. You know, he was obviously a powerful king, special weaponry, and he was called Arthur. So I think these guys have found a King Arthur. Now, to go back to the other one, the one in the Scottish Lowlands. Now, there is references which says Arthur wasn't a king. He was Dux Bellorum, the leader of battles. Not a king, a leader of battles. I think, to be honest with you, I think I've waffled on enough. I'm going to tell you what I think my theory is. Just no more notes. I think what my theory, this is my thinking now, is that actually there were two Arthurs. Okay. Now this business of him not being a king. Yeah, I think the original Arthur was a chieftain in this area here, in the Scottish Lowlands. I think he had a phenomenal reputation as a fighter, which led to this reputation. He appears in poems. People compare their fighters to this great warrior. I think there is so much evidence of an Arthur here that I think, yes, there was one. The original Arthur is from the Scottish Lowlands. He was a chieftain. He probably fought other Britons and the Picts. I don't know if he engaged much with the Angles and the Saxons. I don't know if they got that far north by that time. I think what subsequently happened was, this guy was obviously a name all over Britain. Now what the fathers do with the sons, when they're naming them, name them off their entire football teams, I mean, Gordon a cartoon. People only started calling their children Gordon as a first name after Gordon a cartoon in his honour. I suspect that this guy in Powys, he was a next generation on from the original Arthur. Now this guy was a king. This was King Arthur. Now then, why the battles are so significant is we've got a cluster in Scotland and then a spread here. Well, I think the Scottish ones was the original King Arthur, the British chieftain. I think the others, Lincoln, Baden, Hampshire, I think were this King Arthur in East Wales. Now, one other, well, for a start, Baden. Sources do name Arthur as the leader of the Britons in Baden. Some people dispute this, say it might have been a local warlord. Thing is though, in like Gildas doesn't mention anyone other than Vortigern, Ambrosius and Arthur. He mentions those three guys. If there was a fourth guy who'd won the Battle of Baden, I mean, this was an incredible victory for the British. The Saxons went quiet for 40 years. Yeah, went back into the corner in the southeast and were quiet for 40 years. It was the only place in Europe where the invading barbarians were stopped. This was a massive victory for the British. If it was a fourth guy who'd won this battle, we'd know him. There would be a name somewhere. Somebody somewhere would mention him. The fact that it isn't, I think, does indicate it was King Arthur who won at Baden. It might have been, Ambrosius. I'm not ruling that out, but I think it was a bit late in the day for him. So I think, yeah, Arthur did win at the Battle of Baden. Now, Arthur finally met his end in his next battle, which I believe was some years on at Camlan. All we know about Camlan is that he fell with somebody by the name of Mordred. It's early in the morning, I can't quite remember, but again, Camlan, it could be anywhere. I mean, Camlan is Welsh for crooked shore. Yeah, another example of it is Morecambe is Welsh for it's Moor Cam, crooked sea, because it's like on the bends. Yeah, Camlan is a crooked shore of a river. I mean, every single river in the country has a crooked shore, so Camlan could be anywhere really. But a lot of people place it on Hadrian's Wall, which would indicate Northern Arthur again. Others in Wales, which would be King Arthur. Couldn't really tell you on that one. Don't know where Camlan was. But again, it's the two guys getting mixed up, I mean, anyway, I think we've gone down that route enough now. So, I hope that was of interest to people. I always think after I've done these things, oh, you missed that out, you missed that out. Maybe I should have made a few notes. But yeah, essentially two King Arthurs. Northern chieftain with a formidable reputation. People start calling their sons after him. And then this second Arthur comes along, who I agree with these guys that there is real solid evidence for a second great warrior by the name of Arthur, who ultimately defeated the Saxons at Baden. So there we are. yeah, what more can I say? I'm going to go and have a rest now. have me breakfast. Hope this was of use to people, and if you got this far, a sincere thank you for watching, and a keen peace.